Hey everybody, what's up? What's up? How you doing? Welcome to JTOLTV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green. I know I call myself hot sauce, but today is such a serious topic um, for our community, for children, period. And what I need you all to do is listen, share this with Ray Ray, Pookie, Grandma, Uncle Tommy, Auntie Susie, whoever, because today we're going to be talking about children depression and suicide. This is such a serious topic. And I remember we never heard of suicide in the Black community as we hear it today. So listen, come on, jump on, be a part of this. But before I do, I want to put up some things. We're going to be showing some videos. And in those videos, it might trigger you if you've had suicide in your family or someone you know. Listen, just watching it myself brought tears to my eyes. So can you please just remember, I'm sorry, I'm trying to cut all these devices off. Can you remember that this is such a serious subject? And but I want to bring someone on that can help us gain an understanding, gain a foothold in this before it happens to someone we know, someone we love, someone we care about, somebody's child. So God bless you. Check this out.
I was often told that I couldn't have children. So knowing that he came, he's just my miracle child, truly. And I treated him like he was a miracle and that he was loved every single day. The only thing that he ever said he wanted to be since he was a small child, a superhero. That's it. I knew that he was a gift. And that is why he was so exposed to so many things, because I have seen the world. I just took my time to see it again through his eyes. Yeah, that's my dude.
Shout out to my family. I love you, Mama. I love you, Daddy. Mwah.
It really is speaking to the love of my husband and I. I saw him on one day. 7 days later, I saw him again. 7 being the number of completion, 7 being the God's perfect number. But more than anything that I raised him on was, how many times do you forgive your enemy? 7 times 70.
Tammy Charles and her son 7 are where we're starting this story. What we originally thought was an isolated incident in a suburban Louisville school district ended up being about so much more. According to the Department of Education, 37% of Black kids say that they've been bullied over race, the way they talk, or even a disability. And 7 is one of those kids. We backed up his entire story through videos, school records, and police reports. This is what happened to 7.
The very first thing, a little girl called him a nigger on the bus. And then, fast forward the next week, he's on the bus and the little girl says, well, you know that nigger can't fight. He gets off the bus, runs to his dad and says, Daddy, I got choked on the bus, but don't be mad because I think he has a mental problem.
This kid put him in a headlock to the point where students on the bus were screaming for the bus driver to stop. The bus had to be pulled over. What is the district policy involving physical contact?
We individualize cases. We have the people in place with our bullying prevention team that can review complaints or concerns from families, and they work with our schools to resolve those matters. Children are safe in Jefferson County Public Schools. There have been reviews in the past for how investigations were looked at, and we have done different things to address that and make sure that everything is looked at through a very thorough lens.
I tell parents all the time, don't put your child in that position. So if they're complaining about it, go up to that school and demand that that school do something.
What happened to the meetings you were supposed to do? You know you care. I looked to the principal kind of like an overhead, like, did you get my message? And she just gave me this. It's been taken care of. I was at his school average twice a week for lunch. I volunteered for everything. it broke down the false security that I had, that I am this involved. They see me this much. And for that, maybe my kid would have some sort of exception.
I know that I can get it out of my mind, and tomorrow's like a better day, so I can still make friends with him.
77 days of the first time my son was bullied to the day he died. 77 days in between there. And this is why my son is dead. I said, well, what did the teacher say? And he said, well, I want you to tell her to stop. And she said, well, how can I help her if your mom has called the principal and the principal's talked to her mom, and if your mom can't do it and the principal can't do it, what makes you think that I can stop her? And besides, 7, nobody likes a tattletale. He died of being bullied to death. Wow, my kid.
There's this idea when you're young, developmentally, you may not understand the permanency of suicide. I don't think sometimes that kids understand there's no coming back from this. This is much younger children.
People always say black people don't do that. Yes, here's a picture.
I do think black parents in particular, we try to educate our kids about what it means to be black and how people are going to engage you in the world. I don't know that we're able to give them the full extent and teach them to the full degree of what those struggles are going to be like. What parent expects to have a race conversation with a child and the child is 5, 6 years old?
I never took the time to teach my son about racial differences, racial inequalities. I never did that because he was 10. I want this little boy to be a little boy. Come on, 7. So I went downstairs because he was so funny. He was such a jokester. And then, because at this point I'm mad, like, boy, where you hiding at, you know? So something said, look over my shoulder in his room. And there my baby was. With his back to me. I grab him around his waist and I say, boy, why would you do this? And I remember saying out loud, God, why my son? Why my son? And I heard, just as clear as I'm talking to you, a very nonchalantly put, I gave my son.
Wow, wow, wow. Listen, this is such an important topic. And can you please just share this video out? So we just saw a video of a mother who lost her 10-year-old son. How many times have we heard of kids, which we never used to hear of, losing their life by suicide? What does a 10-year-old kid know about killing himself, right? So I want to bring my special guest up here. I met her. We were hanging out at this church gathering for women. They were just loving on women. And me and her are kind of alike. And that's what made me really like her more. This is Judith Thurman. And this is her thing. I can't tell you all she is because I don't have a thing, her bio here. But what I can tell you is I know she's a specialist in this field and just the mental health capacity in itself. So how you doing, sis?
Hi, how are you this evening? I'm doing well. Very excited to be here as well.
I am excited about this. As I was sharing with you earlier, I had did a boost. I had made a mistake and sent the wrong boost, but the boost went all to Africa. And I get all of a sudden I'm getting all these emails and through Facebook about they want classes. Is there classes for this? They want to know, and they were talking about the suicide rate of young boys and girls in Africa. And and we're, we're here in America, it's just starting to rise. But over in Africa, she said it's even higher. So we know in America, suicide rate for children is the second suicide rate, period, is the second leading death, he said, between ages of 15 and 24. That's scary. Mm-hmm. That but one poll, this one says 15 and 24, but I have another one that says the age of 10 through 24. That is very scary. So can you first do me a favor? Tell us who you are. Tell us about yourself. And then I want to just talk about that video I just shown you, sis. So go ahead, do your thing.
All righty. Well, that video was very, very alarming. But for most people, it probably have been alarming to know those statistics for the most part. But it is so true. The suicide rate in America, pretty much, the Black children and adolescent rates, of anxiety and depression pretty much have worsened in the last couple of years. And they have increased compared to their counterpart to higher levels of stress, negative health outcomes, facing long-standing health disparities, and pretty much lack of access to mental health services and diagnosis. So before I go any further, I'll just tell you who I am. My name is Judith Thurman. I am a LMSW, which is a licensed Master's of Social Work. My master's is in mental health, dealing with mental health, dealing with substance abuse and chemical dependency and mental health. I specialize pretty much with adolescents, ages from 10 on up. I'm presently a mental health therapist, have been for over 11 to 12 years at a community health in the city of Ann Arbor. So we service probably over about 500 families for the most part, with children who have mental health disorders. This is an alarming, as I say, it's an alarming figures and alarming rates. I really believe since the pandemic in 2020 that things have exacerbated even the more. Reasons, there are so many protective factors or risk factors, I should say, that have contributed to suicidal and depression. But before we even get to suicide, I'd like to talk about depression, because depression is probably the precursor before suicide. And a lot of people, don't understand, why is my child depressed? What are some of the signs? If you have a child from the age of 3 on up, because usually data has suggested that the age 3 is really the lowest threshold at which childhood depression appears. So even at that age, there can be early intervention, but it can start at that age. The National Institute of Mental Health estimates that more than probably 10% of adolescents age 12 to 17 experience major depression in any given year. It's on the rise in both children and adolescents. And some of you may say, well, why is it on the rise? What's going on? We have never seen numbers that have risen in the last number of years. And I earlier said that I believe that the pandemic contributed to it. But let's talk about what you need to look for. What signs can you see in someone who is in depression? We will still deal with suicide. But as I said earlier, depression comes before the act of suicide. So we want to deal with those issues. And so some of the signs and symptoms that you will see depression in children or adolescents could be a variety of things. You could see that there could be changes. If you notice that there's changes in eating or sleeping habits, they're either sleeping too long or sleeping not enough. They may experience behavior problems at school. And a lot of times that could be, depending on conduct. It can be dependent on a number of different things. Not being able to concentrate. Children who are depressed, or symptoms of children with depression, also have feelings of sadness or hopelessness. They have a lack of interest. and doing everyday activities that was once fun for them. You also notice that they interact less with their families and friends. So when you start seeing some of these signs, that should be some warning red flags for you. That something is wrong. Sometimes it accompanies physical symptoms. Those physical symptoms could be anything from headaches to stomach aches. They will have low energy. If you have a kid that is pretty much always, high energetic, and his energy begins to drop, or he has general tiredness, that's another symptom. Mood changes, one day they can be happy, the next day they can be staring out, or daydreaming, or even just, sad than the day before. They also may be irritable. A lot of times kids who are depressed could be very, very irritable. And then other signs, I'll give you a couple more signs. They may eat less, or they may eat less than usual, or they may eat more. And then the last thing is that they have thoughts of suicide. They haven't pretty much, and some may have had or articulated that. A lot of times kids don't. At the given time when they're faced with some of these symptoms of depression. So a lot of these symptoms that I've talked about are some signs that you can look and observe, take notes. I think it's so important for parents to be very, very observing of their children, to make sure you give them the time that they need. A lot of times we give, kids what they need externally, the gym shoes, the number of high things that we want to do, social media devices or whatever. But kids really need, I believe, a lot more time with their parents. I believe one of the worst things that could have happened, and I know that it's been an American tradition, it's probably been all over the world, was when the family came and sat down and dined together at the table. You don't see that anymore. We're in a fast-paced world, fast-paced society. Parents are working 2 and 3 jobs. You have a lot of single parents. There's a number of issues that impact depression. As I said earlier, data has suggested that age 3 is the lowest threshold at which sometimes you'll see these symptoms appear. In terms of ethnicity, the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, pretty much reports found that Black and Hispanic youth had either equal or a higher rate of depression than white youth. Some of the risk factors, because there are a lot of risk factors when it comes to depression. Sometimes it deals with factors where they've had a history of depression in their family. When kids are going through excessive stress, that's a risk factor. And abuse and neglect, especially abuse and neglect, because most children who experience abuse and neglect often experience what they call trauma. And we can talk about trauma later on, but trauma is a significant piece to depression. Trauma is pretty much anything that is significant that has happened in a child's life that they constantly keep before them, and it impacts their overall level of functioning. They are always fixated and have memories of being hurt. They could have been in a fire. They could have witnessed physical abuse, domestic violence. A number of different things have impacted that has contributed to and brought on by trauma. I really want to make note of that because it's very, very important. Most of the children that come into our care, about 70% of them step into the doors with trauma. So other risk factors of childhood depression is also bullying. There's a lot of children that get bullied in the schools system, get bullied in the neighborhood systems. But now, the days of where it just happens in school are reduced, because the new technique now is bullying through social media. A lot of our kids use social media, TikTok, a number of different things, Instagram, And a lot of times kids have gotten killed as a result of someone posting or fight, someone making threats to another colleague or peer in class, and it goes out, it carries out of the classrooms into the streets. And so a lot of times kids don't even alert parents that they've been bullied. So that is some of the risk factors as well. It's also known to run in families. A lot of times when we do what we call a biopsychosocial assessment, that's a history of when we do an intake on a child and talk about everything in terms of mental health, risk factors, behaviors that they're seeing, that type of thing. A lot of times they've had parents who've been depressed, or they've had grandmothers who've been depressed. So sometimes depression is known to run in families, suggesting that, genetic factors, it can contribute to the risk of developing this disease. But, its research is really still in its infancy stage and early stages. And there's really little known research about whether or not about the genetic basis of this disease. But we do know that it runs in families. A lot of times there's triggers. When you've dealt with the symptoms, when you have observed as parents, a lot of times you will get referrals from the school system that says Johnny is not doing well in school, grade dropped. Johnny has gotten, may have gotten into a fight, a number of different things. So a lot of times the school systems are some of the key venues or the key places where kids express themselves. The schools are supposed to be some of the safe places, but we know, through the violence that we've seen down through the years of different schools and massive school shootings, that may not also be true anymore. So a lot of times there's triggers. And triggers are those things that happen to let you know that this is this is an onset of these experiences and these feelings that these children are experiencing. Any combination of things that relate to physical health, life events, family history, their environment, and really all those factors. If you look at physical health, depending on, what are their eating habits? What type of food are they? Are they eating healthy food? Is there any medical or physical diseases that they have? Any life events. Life events can be anything for them. It could be divorce, separation. It could be a number of different things. It could be death. So there's a number of things that can trigger depression in children.
Wow, wow. Yeah, that is a lot. And a couple of things that you said about the hereditary, or falling, in within the line of depression and those type of things. So if that kind of, it's like a hereditary thing that can run in the family, and if you're someone in your family has it, to be mindful. I know I was watching this movie about this man, and I think his dad committed suicide. So when he became an adult and had 2 children, and the pressure from his job, he committed suicide in front of his son, and his son battled committing suicide.
Yes.
So wow, that's a lot. And I just wanted, so Kim, you said some key things, and let me just put a comma right there. You also talk about recently, even in bullying, a lot of our children are being bullied. And I bullied when I went to school, and I went to the school in our community. That means I went to the elementary school that was in our community. I went to the middle school that was in our community, as well as the high school. But now, and that helped me form different relationships within my community. So I knew everybody 10 blocks east, north, south, and west. Today's children, they have a school of choice and not knowing the people in their community. So when they go outside, because we all want the best education for our children, right?
Yes.
Our philosophy is we need to open up our own schools, but that's another subject for another time. But when you got some Black kids, Black children going to predominantly white schools and being, especially with this time that we're in, and being bullied. I know I just it's a big YouTube not YouTube, but TikTok that's going around about some children in Georgia, a football team where the predominantly white children and the Black children, they were selling them as a slave auction. And, so I'm giving $10 for this one, and I'm giving $20 for that one. And I was just like, so where in our mind, you're talking about the trauma and the thought processes behind that. And so here you go again, trauma from being in a predominantly white school. And, so all the other things that you had mentioned, wow, my mouth is just, I'm just trying to think back, and how it's not that we don't want to spend time with our children. We just don't have the time to spend with our children. So I don't want any parent, beating themselves down because you just don't have time, because then you got to work. Lights and gas is not just, as my mama used to say, ain't no tree growing in the backyard. So, so don't beat yourself down about it, but it's just, we just don't have that time. It's, especially with inflation. So some of us are working 2 and 3 jobs just to support our families. And therefore you got children being left alone up to their own devices. All they look at is TikTok, YouTube, and whatever they have an opportunity to look at, which forms and shapes their thoughts and processes. Yes. Wow, you just said them. I'm like, my head is just spinning. I'm about to play this 2 or 3 times just to get some grasp on that, just within depression. So even with children, so you said some of the signs is when they're depressed, and this is just not for children, it's grown folk too. They isolate themselves. That's what you said, right?
They can, yes. Lack of interest in activities, feelings of sadness, or behavior problems at school, changes in their eating or sleeping habits. And I think I mentioned it twice. Mood changes, stomach aches. And sometimes there's physical symptoms, but it's so good to go to the doctor if we have accessibility to a doctor, because a lot of times symptoms mimic physical symptoms, can mimic psychiatric symptoms, but they could be, the doctors need to rule out to see if it's a medical problem that's causing that. And the key thing about depression is the timing, and intensity. If these symptoms last longer than 2 weeks, it's time to seek help. It's time to reach out and see, where we could get help concerning that. And even concerning when you mentioned about the parents, I definitely don't want to put an indictment on that, because times are so intense. These are some tumultuous times where parents do have to work. But that's why I believe that it takes the village. Back in the day when I was coming, mom and daddy both worked. My mom worked at the school that I attended. My father worked 2 or 3 jobs. There were 8 of us, 6 girls and 2 boys. But wow, we had community. We had the next door neighbors that were there. Then we had the school teachers. In fact, I went to an all-Black elementary school, and I loved it because they didn't play. Most of our core values came from being in that environment, as well as what our parents instilled in us. But it takes community. It takes help so much. It takes so many protective factors to help, kind of pretty much help in dealing with that.
Wow, this is so good. So listen, everyone, listen. This is JTOLTV Talk, where I'm your host, Sonia Green, with my special guest, Judith Thurman, and we're having a discussion about children, Black children, suicide and depression, and just might invert it, but we're talking about suicide. Listen, we're going to take a quick break, give her some time to drink some water, and we'll be right back after these commercial breaks. Please share.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom, man. Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keeping your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on.
Hey, what's up? I'm Coach E, the owner of Fit Habit Fitness and Supplements. Most of our clients come to us because they don't have time to get to the gym. They hate sharing equipment at the gym. They need more accountability. They need someone to prepare a meal plan and monitor their daily food intake. They hate doing cardio all day. They hate drinking shakes all day, and they want real food. They need to lose more than 50 pounds, have small children at home. They want not just a six-pack, but they want their life back. They want to build confidence, look great, but also feel great. They want to lose the weight and keep it off as a lifestyle change. Get off the high blood pressure medication, the list goes on. Our online training is a new and exciting way for me to offer cost-effective fitness and nutrition, life-changing transformation coaching for the entrepreneur who works from home, who needs an effective program without the limitations and expenses of the gym. Our coaching program can be utilized by anyone, anywhere, offering convenience, responsiveness, flexibility, and accountability. Best of all, I can empower my clients with more accountability and support than I ever could in person. So I want to talk to you today. Let's schedule a free consultation and goal assessment so I can see if you will be a great fit for our fitness and nutrition coaching program. Click the link below to get started today. Let's get fit. Peace.
Say this to you all, being prophetic apostolic people. You are vital. The gifts that you have in your life are actually tools and weapons that God has sharpened in you to bring freedom and deliverance. Apostle Ivory Hopkins, the general of deliverance, saying, get her done, soldiers. And always remember, God, he is watching.
Welcome back to JTOLTV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green, and with my special anointed dope guest, Judith Thurman. And we're having a discussion about children, Black children. Listen, I love all people, but we're talking about this crisis in America for Black children. And as I've been finding out, it's just not in America. Black children in the world about depression and suicide. So she gave us some great stuff to talk about and dissect. Now here, can you all do me a favor? Because I know a lot of y'all are watching. Can you just hit that like button, go on YouTube and like this show, and not only that, like my page. But what I want to say is that, so we've been talking about depression. So can you tell us how depression can push us over a little bit into suicide? How does that happen? What are we missing? What should we be looking for?
Well, a lot of times when students or youth, children, since we're dealing with that anxiety and depression, when that goes unnoticed, and a lot of times people just don't know because they don't know the symptoms. They have not experienced it. You know, a lot of times in our families, we have what I call it the Las Vegas code. What happens in our family stays in our family. There's so much stigma when it comes to mental health and depression. And so we don't talk about it. We kind of just, not everyone, but the majority, of our African-American families don't understand the symptoms, don't have what I call psychoeducation, which is understanding what mental health is. And so when that goes on unnoticed, their mental health is really at risk. And this leads to a lot of social and behavioral problems. When it, to the point where the depression has lingered 6 to 8 weeks, it's time to get help, because a lot of times when there is no help, when there's a sense of hopelessness, especially with these kids, because a lot of them have been exposed to environments, they've been that have not been healthy environments. They've been exposed to what I call adverse childhood experiences, or what we call ACE experiences, which pretty much include kind of exposure to systemic racism. We have less access to protective resources. And when I say protective resources, I mean like girls and boys clubs, mentoring programs, activities, any type of sports or activities in our communities, safe schools. A lot of times we don't have stable housing. And then understanding how racism and racial trauma affect mental health and wellness in our Black communities. But when it goes unnoticed, when it goes untreated, what happens is that child, that girl, that boy will begin to experience more of a sense. It'll start off in a small capacity, but then it will lead to what eventually will be called major depression, because of the intensity and how long it has gone unmet or unnoticed. And so what happens, one of the symptoms is that I said earlier to depression is thoughts of suicide. So they have suicidal ideation. That means that they're thinking about it in their heads. They're in their minds, they're thinking, I don't want to be here anymore. There's no, use to living. I'm dealing with so much pain. And you'll see kids who are dealing with pain for the most part will be those who are also cutters. When you see a lot of kids who cut, their wrists, cut different places on their body, they're releasing pain. And so it's imperative that we as a community, these kids have somebody to talk to. It's imperative that we observe these behaviors, because when it becomes to major depression, now it has moved on to a state where suicide is no longer a thought, but then it becomes and slips into what we call suicidal attempts.
I just want to play this because you're hitting on something. I love that you spoke about ACEs. I just found out about that yesterday.
Okay.
But I want to play this clip right quick.
Okay.
Pill after pill.
What'd you feel when you woke up?
Sadness and anger.
Kids are suffering in silence.
By default, even here, like you as a Black child, you are seen as unruly. If you do one thing, it is magnified.
I just try to listen to them, because you don't know what somebody needs exactly until you hear what they have to say.
They go to what they know, they go to what they see, and what they see says maybe not living is a solution.
I didn't feel as if I had a right to be sad. I didn't feel as if I had a right to not want to be here and to have all these negative emotions, because I was living this amazing life, supposedly. And I just didn't feel as if it was validated. And when you don't feel validated, you don't speak up. I go back and look at pictures of myself, and you can see it in my eyes. I was sitting there knowing that this was my time, and it was my time to go, and I was very confident in that decision. I just took pill after pill, and I went back into the bedroom. I just laid down, closed my eyes, and then the following morning I woke up.
What'd you feel when you woke up?
Sadness and anger. I had the burden of knowing I tried to take my own life.
Paige Gaines is one of the tens of thousands of survivors of suicide, and now she's trying to help other kids survive as well. Efforts to help kids combat suicide have worked among white children, but for Black kids, hasn't done a thing. The numbers are still going up fast.
If you see that children, regardless of race, regardless of culture, if you see that children are dying, and they're dying from something that is very often preventable, That should be something that alarms all of us.
Kids are suffering in silence, and what do? They go to what they know, they go to what they see, and what they see says maybe not living is a solution. There's this lack of preparation often from all of the adults in their lives to help them understand the kinds of challenges that they're going to have to navigate and the extent to which they're going to have to navigate these challenges.
As a Black person in the public school system, mental health will be taught in a way that's like everybody's the same, and I can appreciate, like, I see where you're coming from, but everybody's not the same. As a Black child, I'm dealing with generational trauma. I'm dealing with racism. I'm dealing with colorism from the Black community sometimes. It's a lot on top of each other.
I don't belong in this crowd. I don't belong in that crowd. If I act a certain way around white people, I'll be labeled as ghetto. If I act a certain way around, Black people, or like I'll be labeled as trying to act white.
I learned this like at a very young age because like my elementary school never talked about race at all. And I feel like race isn't communicated well in schools.
In the Black community, children are expected to grow up faster. They're treated as grown-ups. They're being like suspended at higher rates, and they're often pushed to the side or treated like they can deal with more.
Now I'm being expected to act much older, and so I feel like that's like a lot of responsibilities and pressure.
There's this data that says that often people look at Black children as much older than they are. So the child might actually be 6, but people are looking at him or her like they're 10 years old and treating them accordingly.
If a Black kid is acting out in class, they move towards punishing that behavior instead of getting the kid help, saying maybe something's going on at home, maybe this is a mental health concern.
They need policies that say we will tolerate this, we will not tolerate that. Here's what happens. First offense is this, second offense is this, third offense, you gotta get out of here.
People having spaces to talk about it where they feel comfortable.
In my experience, having a Black person talk to me about mental health and to talk about racism openly and to call out racism in the classroom has been so beneficial because it helps me see my self-worth.
When you look at pictures like people talking to therapists, it's always like a white girl with blonde hair talking to her white therapist, and it's like, well, if it's only white people who need therapy, then clearly I'm fine.
Wow. So what did you think of that?
Oh, they are on point. In fact, especially when she just talked about our children being treated older, who are younger, who are treated as perceived as being older, just came from a conference where that data was. They called it adultification. And it was dealing with that specific area, but they are on point concerning everything. Some is just the challenges that our young people have been facing and continue to face.
So let me ask you, how do you know the signs? Like we done talked about depression, but you know what we usually say, go pray about it. God gonna deal with it. You know the things that we normally say. What we didn't have a choice but to depend on God to help us through these situations because we didn't have access to all. We have more access to things now, but the problem is we don't know how to access them. So let's say I'm depressed and my parents just tell me, get over yourself, you all right, and whatever. And I have made up in my mind, like the young lady said, at 12 years old, she had kind of made up her mind, I'm gonna do this thing. So what can you see? Is it kind of the same thing with depression that you see them preparing? What's different from depression and then determining in their mind that they're going to commit suicide?
Untreated. That's the main thing. And not recognizing the symptoms. A lot of times, some kids will come and talk about it, but some kids won't, especially in younger children. So dealing with therapy from a clinical perspective, young people, when you see behaviors, they can't articulate how they feel. So you'll see it in their behaviors. And so they'll act out in the classroom. They'll, have tantrums. They'll isolate themselves, a number of different things. So to be making sure that you look and observe what's happening with your kid, we have to take notice. Even if, and you look at the stigma of mental health as that depression, those things, oh, that ain't no big deal. But when we look at a physical ailment, we wouldn't talk about diabetes or heart disease like that. A lot of times we don't want to go to the doctor because we don't want to hear that, we have such a specific disease or if it contracted, specific sickness or whatever. But you got to look at the symptoms and not knowing them. I know the Bible says my people perish for lack of knowledge, but you got to understand and get some information. Information is crucial in this hour. So you got to observe your child. And then there's red flags. There's always something in terms of depression that will let you know something is not right. You'll get something from a teacher. If there's continual referrals from a teacher, if you see your kids not eating, not getting up, sleeping in late, just a number of different things, not even getting on their devices, because, especially this generation, Generation Z, their whole life is in their phones. So being observable is key, I believe, in terms of these symptoms. And I know we've said in the church, just lay hands on folk and they'll come out. I believe in bridging both. I believe in bridging spiritual and natural. But I also know too that Fred Price wrote a book called Faith, Foolishness, and Presumption, is that you need to be wise in getting and understanding and what you're dealing with. And a lot of times we just don't know because we don't know, or we just don't care. I'm not going to say we don't just going to care, because I don't want to put people just are not aware, but you've got to start paying attention to behaviors, because behaviors tell it all. Having conversations with your kids. And I'm not talking about having the type of conversations when they're always in trouble. Take some time and talk to your kid to get into their world. A lot of times, and I know that, people are working, we have all of that, but I still believe in community, and I still believe that we need, if they can't talk to you, we need to find some folks in the community. We need to find, the pastor, the youth pastor, the, Gigi, mama, girlfriend, auntie, whoever, but somebody that they can connect with. Because the thing is, kids don't develop. Their brain doesn't develop until the age of 26. And so a lot of them can't deal. We can deal, and some of us can as adults. But think about a kid who don't have the ability, or who's not utilizing and understanding healthy coping skills. And so that is the major key. They can't cope. And when they can't cope, that sense of hopelessness and sadness, it turns into what those young ladies talked about, not fitting in, low self-esteem. All of that has contributed. That's why it's so important to talk to your kids, to let them know who they are, to place those values in. But then there's, we have what we call systemic racism at all areas. And especially when it comes to African American communities, we don't trust the systems. And, we've had the Tuskegee Institute, the Tuskegee, and my brain, I have a brain freeze. But we had that research, those experiments. That's what I wanted to say. We had the Henrietta Lacks experiments that were placed, where we couldn't trust the system. So I think historically that Black African American community does not trust the system. And then the system has had disparities amongst, our people. There have been health disparities, how we treated with, how we're perceived. And even how, when I went to that training, when they talked about adultification in children being that they're perceived as being older than what they are, they pretty much stereotype our kids and look through a different lens, saying that if you're loud, and talk or whatever, you considered a loud Black angry girl, So those type of lenses are not looked at other folk. I've been dealing and interfacing with school systems where I've had to go in. One of my jobs is to go help advocate for kids who get suspended for the most part, and just what they've done in terms of just the disparity in our systems. Systems are.
Wow. I have a question, but someone asked a question, but I want to play that at the end when we talk about resources. So I got a couple more videos, because I believe that we're more visual because some of us don't like to read as much.
I like that.
So I'm gonna play another video. We'll be right back, guys.
He was my special child.
Everybody's a woulda, coulda, shoulda until it happens to you. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Wish I woulda, shoulda, coulda had my son.
Young male child measuring approximately 46 inches tall and appearing the stated age of 7 years.
When we say suicide doesn't discriminate, we mean that no one is immune from suicidal ideation, attempts, or even death.
I would do anything to have my son back, but Lord knows it's not going to happen. He was my special child. When I was told I couldn't have no more kids, I had him. So that's why I call him my special baby.
He was so full of energy and he loved dressing in costumes. He'll come out wearing a Batman, mask and Superman cape.
The deceased is dressed in a one-piece Batman pajama suit and a pair of black underpants.
I feel like my baby just was pushing everything in that little brain of his a 7-year-old, dealing with calling a nigger, snaggletooth. You're ugly, you dress funny. He did not want us to go up there and embarrass him because he didn't want to get nobody in trouble. So he didn't say nothing. He was just dealing with it and praying for them.
Young male child measuring approximately 46 inches tall and appearing the stated age of 7 years.
Everybody's a woulda, coulda, shoulda until it happens to you. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Wish I woulda, shoulda, coulda had my son.
I would do anything to have my son back, but Lord knows it's not going to happen.
Black kids are dying by suicide at rates 2 times higher than their white peers. And as we started digging into the numbers, we found research and experts were backing up the facts that the numbers that are actually out there aren't even close to the reality of the situation. We started looking into what happened to Jeffrey Taylor after seeing a local report out of San Antonio, Texas.
Family prayer? Yeah. Okay, well, let us pray. Who's first? Me.
My gun was kept in my Bible case. And at that particular day, it was pushed up under my bed.
I don't know if he may have just slipped up, when you're in your parents' room and you see something you're not supposed to see.
I went straight to the room. I saw my baby laying there like he normally is. But when I looked to the left, I saw my gun. And I saw blood, dry blood on my baby's face. And I just screamed. I yelled and I started holding Jeffrey Moore. My baby was hard as a rock. He was hard as a rock. I put him back. And all I can do is run. I was screaming. I just kept saying, Jeffrey, why? I told you to hold on. I was gonna take care of him. But God has something else in store for my baby. That is something that's gonna always stay with me. Pray to the day I die. Hear my baby cry out to me, because that was a different cry.
At present, it appears to be an accidental event with no clear evidence of foul play or suicide.
We know a lot about what works for white youth in terms of preventing suicide, and we just don't have that same evidence base or literature around Black youth suicide.
We've gone from feeling like suicide really wasn't an issue for Black and brown communities to now realizing that Black and brown kids, and particularly young Black males, are dying at rates double that of our white peers. I grew up hearing that if you're experiencing anxiety or depression, you just need to pray harder. I didn't have the right to feel anxiety. I didn't have the right to feel emotional pain. We saw the deaths of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And for Black and brown kids that see this over time, that starts to weigh on anyone.
Wow. All I got to say is, wow. I think these are great videos. They all kind of hit on everything. You know, I had this thought, and Lord forgive me, and I could be wrong. I've noticed, this is just my, this much of medical experience, knowledge, but I've just noticed that when we were all together, like when we stayed in our own communities, it wasn't, suicide was still there, but it wasn't as prevalent. It's just when we went outside of our community and starting to mix with other communities, it seemed like the suicide rate increased. I don't know if that makes sense or not. That's just my told you this much of my medical knowledge, which is nothing. What's your thoughts?
Well, you know, I look at society, and I think there's some truth to what you said. But I also know too that when we have gone outside of our communities, I came from an all-Black community, Royal Oak Township, the real 8 Mile. Okay, and we were integrated into the Oak Park School District. You know, I come from a strong family, strong mom and dad who taught us, hey, Black is all right, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, blah, blah, blah. But when I went to the high school, Oak Park, I had to deal with, at that time, was predominantly Jewish community. And I came in contact with, you know, and very intelligent young, you know, peers, and they didn't look like me. And so I started to question, you know, who I was outside from the inside, you know, from looking externally, you know, I don't look, am I good enough? Am I cute enough? Am I smart enough? So there were some doubts that I had as a result of that. But I also was able to be strengthened because the path that was laid before us to even be a part of that, we had some strong ancestors who pretty much, you know, got together and advocated that we have, you know, all rights and privileges thereof. But I believe that, you know, it's a combination. I think that we still need community. We still need that village. And I don't think we've had the village like we should have, but back then we had the village. And I shouldn't say that. I don't want to make generalized statements, but I know that the village was important. I think it's just what your core values, what you've been taught, that will take you and being able to deal, because a part of suicidal ideation and suicide is being not able to utilize healthy coping skills.
Yes.
Not being able just to use those, not knowing what you could do, those type of things. That's part of the issue, but just understanding, you know, symptoms and then talking. We got to sit down and talk. You know, you got to talk with your child, having a conversation, you know, with your child about what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. Create an environment in your home where they can come to you and say, hey, somebody said I'm looking like this, I'm snagging too, my head is. Create that environment in your home. And a lot of times, you know, this is the generation, the tech generation. So their whole life is their phones, their whole, you know, or whatever. Be able to observe what, you know, be able to check that out too. And sometimes they'll try to block you. But I think you got to be involved, more involvement in our communities. I think that, you know, we have been so, oh gosh, traumatized systemically with racial systemic racism, that it has drained us. And sometimes I think we've tried to assimilate only to find out that we really needed to be true to who we were. But that's a whole nother ball of wax and a rabbit trail that I could go down. But you know, to your response, I think it could be a combination of both, but I still think it still starts at the home.
Wow, that's some good stuff right there. So wow, I'm just really I feel like we haven't really, we're just like just click the tip off of this conversation.
Yes.
So listen, I'm going to take a station identification break. I know we've been showing a lot of videos, but I know a lot of y'all are more visual. I'm a visual learner as well as I can read. But you know, I read. I do read, y'all. I do read books, but I am more of a visual that stimulates me more than I can read it. Then I need to see it in action. So let me just say. So we're going to play, we're going to choose some more commercials. We'll be right back with my special guest, Miss Judith Thurman, breaking it down about children, depression, and Black children, depression and suicide. And listen, y'all, again, please share this. I know I keep asking y'all, but this is so crucial because just you watching this may save somebody's life, may change somebody's life, right? I know we ain't on here prophesying and casting out devils, but I can do that too. Anyway, see, I told you I'd get in trouble. We'll be right back after this station break.
I've never been on a blind date before. I'm just a little nervous. He is so poetic, so fine, and he is such a gentleman.
The homie is lying to you. You need to get out of there right now.
Hello, my name is Diane Kelly. I'm the founder and director of Felsher Tutoring Services. We offer tutoring services for medical assistant. Here is what we do.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. We are FTS certified.
Well, thank you and welcome back to JTOLTV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green, and with my special dope guest, Mrs. Judith Thurman. Am I right, Mrs. or Miss? It does. We just Ms. That's right. And
Boaz ain't here yet.
I know. Listen, you don't want Boaz. Boaz died the night of the wedding, so we don't want Boaz. We want him to live. So anyway, so listen, guys, I'm telling you, this is so crucial. I've been playing a lot of truth this month regarding the word, and this topic is so important. I have one more video, then we're going to talk for a few more minutes, and then I want you to tell us about how we can find you and some other questions. And how can we get a hold of your services? If we don't, what can we do? So let's check this one last video out. And trying to find.
I love your videos. They hit home, and all they do is confirm some of the things that I already said. So I love them.
I do. I think it's very important because some people, again, they're just visual, like you using those big words that they may not understand, and so seeing it, you know, well, dog, my kid acts like that, or you know, because I know I wrote a book, Depression, the Silent Killer, and I talked about how depression is different in seniors, it's different in women, it's different in men, it's different in children. Yes. And you're thinking that it's just the way they are, but it's not. So hold on, let me go and get this together. And what is this? Open this record. Okay. Now it's being, let's see. Where is it? There we go. Okay.
I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy. I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think you act different than usual,
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason,
or getting really mad, not able to sleep, or sleeping too much,
shutting her friends out, or giving her stuff away,
acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late,
suddenly not doing stuff you used to love,
or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed, not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself. It happens more than you think, more than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said something.
I wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. Well, if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask. They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing yourself is to ask. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes?
Well, here's what you don't say.
That's crazy.
Don't be such a drama queen.
You're making too much of this.
That boy's not killing himself. That's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention. You're not going to kill yourself. What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help? We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
A lot of people think about killing themselves. Adults and kids.
Most of them never try it. Some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead. I can't live with this.
I'm going to kill myself.
Take her seriously. Find someone you can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure. But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself. Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school. Or your minister. But don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone you trust. Make a list together. Write down 3, 4, 5 names.
Put the suicide hotline number on there too. Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe. If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. Bullets too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to. We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask. Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut, because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference, all the difference, in your kid's life.
Wow, that was pretty.
Hey, they gave all the answers to everything in terms of resources and what you need to do. It really did. Some of the same things.
So yeah, that was pretty good video. I wanted to make sure I played that last. I have a young lady, Miss Rachel, that's my sister there. So she asked this question here. What type of training requirements are there for teachers as it relates to mental health anyway?
Oh, they depending on where you live, what school systems you are, a lot of the community mental health agencies partner with school systems. They work interface together already. And so there's ample trainings. They have several different trainings that they can participate in ongoing, and the school systems now make it available and make it a requirement for teachers to get mental health treatment. They're also, I don't know about any other city, but I know in Ann Arbor schools, Ypsilanti schools, they have what they call a ROS clinic, which is a clinic to help any kid who may be experiencing any medical or mental health. They will triage them on the spot and make a referral, send a note to the parent to let them know, exactly, so they can follow up. So there's trainings that's part of now becoming part of these particular systems because of what we've seen in terms of the increase.
Can you tell us, because I know I just learned about ACEs last night, and it's I'm gonna invite you to come on because we come on every Monday. So this is given by the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit is really focusing on mental health as far as training leaders and clergy in it. I thought you just might want to help and see what you think. But what do you think of, tell us what ACEs is.
ACEs is adverse childhood experiences that children have been exposed to. Those adverse childhood experiences could be anything in the form of, exposure to, as I said, systemic racism. It could be dealing with life events such as divorce. It could be dealing with systemic issues, lack of accessibility to mental health. But adverse childhood experiences pretty much are traumatic experiences that those children have been pretty much privy to or been exposed to at young age, and it impacts them on all levels: school, social interaction, a number of different things. They're really just trauma experiences that those kids have been subjected to. And a lot of times, children who experience, and it could be anything from lead poisoning, being exposed. I mean, the water crisis in Flint is an example of an adverse childhood experience. So those particular traumatic events impact the children for years to come. And so they help in aiding and determining what we call PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow. Because I know I kind of came in late yesterday. I got off work a little bit late. And is there a test or some type of, to see, do you have any of these symptoms?
There is a scoring inventory, but you usually do that for kids over 18. You don't do them while they're under the age of 18.
Okay.
So, because it usually happens when they're, under that age. So if a kid, who's maybe been in foster care, or somebody who's over the age of 18, there is an assessment tool that they can use to determine what type of their rating in terms of adverse childhood experiences.
Wow, this has just been so powerful. I've learned so much tonight. My heart is just so full. You've been like, what can I do? What should I do? What can I do? And Jesus always have to remind me, Sonia, I saved the world. You can't. So I have to remember that. So can you tell us some more research, how we can get in contact with you if we need some guidance or something? Can they reach out to you, or is there some type of right now I have the suicide number because most texts are going by. What else could we do? What else? How, if we needed to, do you have a not a personal page, but a public page where people can just follow you? Do you offer advice on a page, or just put some wisdom or some information?
Well, I'm getting ready to do that. Now that you said that, I've been planning to do that because one of the mandates that I have is to go into the marketplace, specifically churches, because there is such a lack of information. And some of our church kids, some of the major kids, regardless if they're, church kids, not black or white, our kids are hurting. I've worked with youth over 25 years, have worked in different capacities, from the juvenile delinquency thing to education, upward bound, to dealing with Maxi Boys training facility and foster care and adoptions. So I've always had a passion for youth, but there's definitely resources. I'm glad that you put the suicide, that's a nationwide number, the 988, for anybody that's experiencing that. But if you just need to contact me or call me, you can do that as well. But there's other resources that are available. You might want to look at your community mental health agencies. What I do is I provide trauma. I'm certified in trauma focus. It's called TFCBT, trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy, that really deals with the emotions and feelings. And CBT therapy is really that your thoughts impact your feelings, and your feelings ultimately impact your behaviors. But trauma focused therapy is to help those kids who've had adverse child experiences, who've had trauma in their life and it's never been dealt with. And most of the kids who do commit suicide have had trauma from the beginning. So there's always resources in your community. I would first start with your pediatrician or your doctor, because a lot of times they can check just to rule out if there's any medical issues. And if it is, then they'll recommend you go to a specialist like a psychologist or a psychiatrist. First order is always treatment. Therapy is always the first line or order of treatment. It's really, really important because they have someone, and I always tell my youth, they're like, I'm not crazy. I'm not, I don't want to come to therapy. And I said, think about therapy as someone who you can really sit down to and have as your own on a weekly basis, just to talk about anything that you're experiencing. So individual treatment therapy is a good thing. And a lot of times, we rule that out. We ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't, whatever happens in this house stays in this house. And so individual therapy is a good thing. The Bible says in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So I would highly recommend that as being the first order line of treatment. There's other things that, you could do. You can attend different trainings. There's a lot of trainings that are conducted by mental health agencies, especially in the city of Detroit, Oakland County, Washtenaw County, that if you need some information, parents have rights, and parents are invited to come to attend some of these trainings. For the most part. So there's trainings that you can avail yourself to. If you need me to come to a venue or church specifically, I can give out information. I know that every year we give out information on, needing mental health crisis. And we did it in the venue of a jazz fest that John Lawrence usually gives. And you'd be amazed. We have a booth every year. You'd be amazed at the people said, you know what, I got somebody in my family who I know needs mental treatment, or I have a kid that's dealing with this or that, for the most part. So there are resources available. The United States and the government has put mental health issues and making it a priority. We'll see if they follow up on that. So they're really trying to put resources, money into mental health services. But I think, making sure that you connect with your teachers to see how your children are doing. PTA, don't have to be just once every 6 months. You need to be contacting and seeing what's happening with your kid. You need to be checking their social media accounts as well. And then talking to them, just sitting down, like they said, sitting down and talking to them, saying, because a lot of people, and just like that young man said, they feel that if I bring that up, if I talk to them about that, they'll want to kill themselves. That's farthest from the truth, and then some people feel that, they're just, calling. It's a call for help. It is, but it's, keep thinking. Kids' minds are not developed, and all the different things that they're challenged with now. If they tell you they're gonna kill yourself, take it seriously. So there's that 988 number. That's National Suicide. You can even call 211 in this area, and just say, hey, I need access to help my kid. If you need to contact, and if you catch them in the act or seeing that they do, you can call 911. They will come with an ambulance, and they will admit them and have them assessed at a psych emergency services hospital. That's really, really important. But there's resources that we can access. Insurance is not a big issue now, because I know our agency, we take all types of insurance, Medicaid, and then we have provision for those who don't even have insurance. So that, hopefully that won't be an issue. So there's resources for that, but it's resources out there. There is help if you would avail and take the time, to look, to seek. So I have a private practice as well, but I also do consultation. If people need some information, people call me all the time. My number is 734-218-1399. And my counseling services is called Higher Ground Counseling Services. I'll do a sliding scale, and I take Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I'm also looking at taking others, getting ready to get insurance panel for other insurances. But I'll just talk to the kid. I don't care for the most part, because I know this is part of my passion. This is part of my mission. And I love children, have always loved children, and want to do whatever I can to help them be successful, to help them, understand their purpose and destiny in life and be successful in life. So there is help. All you got to do is reach out. We're there to help you. And with your agency, do you have availability to volunteer or be trained? Yes, you do. We do have volunteer opportunities. There's also other training opportunities that's provided. Some are free, some are not. So if you just need to, you can contact me and call me again at 734-218-1399. I'll answer any of your questions and help you access to resources. Some call me the network queen for the most part, because I can access and can help. If I can't help it, this is not a commercial, but I'll try to do everything in my power to help and reconnect. And I've been in this business over 25 years. So I've been in foster care, adoptions, mental health, substance abuse, prison ministry, all of that. So I have resources available with people who are there to help.
Wow, man, you the bomb diggity, as we say. Listen.
Yeah, I just think about that song, that Yolanda says, what about the children?
Yes.
Remember when we were children?
Yes.
Where would we be today?
Yes.
Yes. We have got to put the resources back into our children.
We do. We've forgotten children and seniors.
Yes.
We've forgotten those. And the Bible says it's good to have gray hair around you, right? Gray hair.
Yes. Even though you grow old, you should, still produce green leaves. And seniors are one of the highest group populations too that have commit suicide.
Wow. So I just really so appreciate this. My heart is like this, that you have taken the time, because you didn't have to do it. And I know this was a prayer for me to even ask, because I wanted to talk about it. And still I feel so we're probably going to get a lot of views afterward, but I still like the fact that we, I always say, listen, stop chasing after the prophetic word and get some stuff. He told Moses, what's in your hand?
Come on.
Right now, what's in your hand is you bringing some information that may change somebody's life or save someone's life. So and especially children, is hard to do. I know my son passed and he had a seizure and died. That was hard for me right there. And just think, if your child just purposely take their own life, and a baby, that's hard for any parent. You don't even have to be a parent and have empathy for that, So I so appreciate you. man, you dropped the bomb on us, and I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, and I'm gonna play this a couple of times because I think it's so crucial that we got to get it in their ear. We have to put this in their ear to know that there is help, and don't just blow it off. Don't, I'm tired all the time. I went to school. I call it 12 years a slave. I worked, went to college full time. You know, I had 2 classes. It felt like full time, right? 2 or 3 classes a semester. Then I had a family. So you didn't go to sleep till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, then had to rise up.
Ooh, trust me, I know about those days. I'm in school now getting my doctorate in social work, and I have a lot of 2 and 3 o'clock mornings.
Oh, I know. And so I said, I'm not going back to school. My body like, we're not doing this to get that PhD. That's all right. I can depend on you all. But sister, I thank you, Miss Judith Thurman, for taking the time out and sharing with us about children's depression and suicide. And I just want to say this. Listen, I know it may sound like I'm talking about Black children. Listen, I got a wide variety. I know people tell you I know about 10 billion people. So, and they're all not people of color. But to me, this is a concern for me and my community. And I'm going to ask about it because this is something that wasn't happening when I was a child, and I'm sure you either, and that we're seeing a rise of children committing suicide. Now, me as one who cast out devils, I know it's the devil because there ain't no child gonna know how to, take pills unless they've seen it on TV or unless, they gotta get it from somewhere. So just be mindful of what you do, as Ms. Thurman has said, as well as the videos. Listen, if you feel that, put your gun, don't just lock your gun up, get rid of it, get rid of the bullets, get rid of all of your pills, talk to your children. Listen, they just be mad at you and don't want to be with you and just may say, I'm tired of fighting with you, and just take their lives. We just have to be sensitive to what our children are doing, paying attention. I know when I was a kid, listen, everybody knew me from Burner down to Jefferson. And I would not only get tapped from the neighbors, but get tapped from my mom. So at my parents. So everybody, there was a village. We don't have that village anymore like we used to. And so we have to create it. Just like I said, I wish we could, we take all this money and create our schools. That's just my opinion again. But
I agree. And I just wanted to say this. Thank you for the opportunity of coming on, because the Lord had spoke to me about this, and people don't know which one the Lord spoke to you about me this next season, that I was going to be giving information in this area to churches. That was my heart, to the community, the marketplace, about that. So you are helping me fulfill that which He's already spoken to me. And one last thing that people can do is, if you've had a child that has attempted suicide or may feel that they may, try to commit suicide, get help right away. Don't wait. Don't be what that movie said, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And then after you've sought some help, develop what we call a safety plan. A safety plan is having, like those kids talk about, names of folks. If something was to happen to you and you weren't able to help that kid at that particular time, who would you have adults to be able to care for your children? And then that other piece of that safety plan talks about identifying healthy coping skills, and they already have them. What do you do when you get like this? When you get angry, what can you do? It'll have examples like, I'll take a bath, I'll, isolate myself from the room, I'll exercise. Different healthy coping skills that they could utilize to help them fend off those extreme feelings of sadness and anger, which contributed to suicidal ideation. So I just wanted to throw that in, because that was another tool that I wanted to use. A lot of people don't use safety plans, but they work.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So sis, I thank you so much for rocking with us on JTOLTV Talk. And hopefully this won't be your last time. You have really educated us, and man, we got a lot to chew on, and we got a lot that we need to be accountable for. So thank you. I'm going to put you in the green room. Don't eat up all my food. I'll be right back. Hey, thank you all for watching JTOLTV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green. Listen, this is such a vital subject, such a vital conversation that we need to share this. Please share it. I know it ain't, I know y'all like to hear all those prophetic words and people prophesying, but listen, you got to get tools before all the prophesying ain't gonna work when your kid is gone. So get those tools and utilize them. Pay attention to your children. Yes, I know they get on our nerves. Yes, we know that. But listen, they're yours. God gave them to you. So listen, pay attention to your babies. Pay attention to the neighbor's children. You never know. Kids come over your crib and they're, that's their way of out. And they're still crying out for help and you're not paying attention. You know what I'm saying? So pay attention to your surroundings. As we say in the government, pay some attention to some good offset. So anyway, God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. Thank y'all for watching JTOL TV Talk, where I am your host, Sonia Green. Listen, this is what we say. We change the world one conversation at a time. So I hope this conversation has changed you, and then you can go on and change someone else. All it takes is one conversation to change someone's life. Goodbye. God bless. I'll check you out next week. Shalom.